Hey everybody, today we're talking about Batman Dark Age. Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. As always, I'm your host, Brent and today we're talking about Batman Dark Age. This is another, it's not a graphic novel per se, it's a collection, but it's another story by Mark Russell and Michael Allred, who, if you know that team, you probably know them from Superman Space Age. Now, is this a sequel? No. Kind of. Barely. Does it take place in the Superman Space Age world? No, absolutely not. The interesting part about Superman Space Age, and I love this book, so go check out my review. I have it on the channel. Aside from the gorgeous Mike Allred art, I love his art. It featured Batman heavily. And if you remember, at the end of this book, Batman and the Joker kind of had a falling out in a final confrontation, and both of them, kind of ended their story. We'll put it that way, right? And this story ends with Superman basically sending remnants of his people to Earth Universe 832654Z. Okay? So there's that. Batman The Dark Age doesn't take place in the Space Age universe. It takes place in a different one, but it does also feature Earth 8524Z. And it kind of ends in a way that sets up that this Batman, exists at the end of this story in some relation to that Superman Space Age story. So they're linked in that way. So you could kind of take it as a different multiverse story about heroes that we know and love. I will say, though, there is the character of Pariah in here, still talking about a crisis. If you've read Superman Space Age, you might remember that was one of the main things, is that as we went through the 3 issues here, these were like double or triple size. They were big issues. We were talking with Pariah frequently about an impending multiversal crisis, which basically sets up in the finale some version of Crisis on Infinite Earths. But it ends differently. It's very interesting, very, very cool. And then, ends with Superman in this other dimension multiverse, right? So in here we have Pariah, who's kind of setting things up to mess with Bruce Wayne's life. And he's off screen, off the page a lot, and he doesn't actually come up against Batman, but he is involved, and he is kind of alluding to there being a crisis in 1985, 1986. Even though in this book we don't really experience that, we're following Bruce Wayne's story. I would think the most interesting thing about here is, it is a twist on Bruce Wayne's origin, but over the 6 issues you go from his beginning to his Batman career to the end of his lifespan, because it features a lot of narration from an older gentleman in a nursing home, seemingly remembering his life as Bruce Wayne Batman. Is it Bruce Wayne Batman? We do find out, but I don't want to give it away. But that's kind of the hook here is, you have an older gentleman reminiscing about being Batman. You do have Ra's al Ghul is featured in here, and he's kind of the main guy that trains Bruce on how to do all the ninja stuff, right? And Bruce goes off to the Vietnam War. Like, all this stuff takes place in old United States, in the Silver Age kind of thing. Starts off in 1957, and that's kind of the year that Bruce's parents are killed, and then he grows up as a child of the 60s and goes through the 70s, in Vietnam, and then comes out basically as Batman in the early 1980s. And then the future stories are set 5 years from today in 2030 in Gotham. So it's kind of an interesting thing. And you do see different iterations of Batman's costume. It's got a Batman Begins vibe to it. Not as much as like, here's how the costume works, just as much as Lucius Fox is here kind of doing the same thing, providing Bruce with tech and heading up the research division of Wayne Enterprises, as opposed to, which is shuttled off to the side. The most interesting thing here is how much a character the board members of the Wayne Enterprises board are, specifically Roman Sionis. I never know how to pronounce that name. Basically, the guy who's Black Mask in other comic books. He's not Black Mask here, but he is the leader of the False Face Society, and they're like the major Gotham gang running around in this Gotham City. And what I did like here also is the way Mark Russell writes Gotham City. He sets it up as an engineered cycle of destruction from the False Face Society through Wayne Enterprises, through the gangs, through the police department, through the prisons, and back into the pharmaceutical industry that Wayne Enterprises is profiting off of. So it's a really interesting look at the cycle of destruction that they have set up for themselves in order to extract the most amount of wealth out of this city as they can, all while stepping on the people who are providing them with that wealth, whether it be buying illicit drugs or, billing for criminals in the asylum or, prisoners and things like that. All basically, I'll say it's probably a little bit more anti-corporate than most people would think, but it's looking at all these mega corporations and how they have fingers in everything, right? And how they can affect society in order to kind of boost up their bottom line to no one's benefit but the board members themselves. That is a really interesting thing on Batman, and Bruce here, is playing the millionaire playboy in order to keep up appearances, but also to kind of say, give the middle finger to the board and spend the money that they're making him as fast as they can make it for him. So it just kind of amps up the tension between Bruce Wayne, the billionaire playboy philanthropist, as Tony Stark likes to say, and the board, because they see him as he's working actively against them, even though he's still profiting off of the bad things that they're doing because he's still a board member, things like that. So that is a really interesting way to look at Batman. And then on the other side, you have the philanthropy Bruce Wayne's doing. And on the other side, you have Batman doing the active crime fighting and targeting things that are going to reduce that squeeze from the Wayne Enterprises board. It's really, really neat how he sets it up. And you don't even think of it as being that deep because you're involved with Batman, with Robin. There's a character like the Joker in here. And Batman is joining the Justice League and kind of thinks that they're dumb, because they're not focused on his problems, they're focused on other problems. They spend a lot of time sitting around and talking, things like that. So I won't, abuse you if you said Superman Space Age was way too sci-fi for me, Brent. I don't want to read Batman Dark Age. This is not sci-fi. It's barely related to that, and other than I found out that the dimensions are the same at the very end. It's kind of coincidence. You can take it as that, and Pariah's in here. But it's a majority Bruce Wayne story through and through, from the beginning of his life through the end of his life. And I think the take on it is very, very cool, very interesting. It's in a way that we haven't really seen Batman operate before in terms of what his explicit mission is. It's not just to eliminate crime in Gotham. It's to eliminate crime in Gotham that his board has proliferated in order to keep Gotham a dump. Because Bruce's parents' original vision was one of the future, kind of like Thomas Wayne at the beginning of Batman Begins, saying how the train links everything and they're providing free and cheap transportation to the people all around the city, things like that. It was really, really excellent. Michael Allred, his art, I think is fantastic here. It's not your typical Batman art, that's for certain. There's not a lot of shadows. Everything has this kind of pop 60s feel to it, which works for the story for when it takes place in the 60s and 70s. There's great colors here by Laura Allred. I believe that's his wife. Just phenomenal. So if you like Michael Allred, if you like Madman, if you like Superman Space Age, you will enjoy this book. I really enjoyed it. That kind of pop 60s sensibility lended itself to the story it was telling as kind of this kind of hippie Batman going up against these corporate cronies in the 70s and 80s, being trained in Vietnam and things like that. So really, really cool. I would say if you're a younger reader and you haven't taken like a world history class or a U.S. history class, you're not going to miss a lot of things, but this is definitely a I don't know how old Mark Russell is if he's my age. I'm 39 now. And I don't know if he's a little bit older than that. He may be an elder millennial, a Gen Xer, whatever. He could be a baby boomer, but he's pulling on a lot of events that happened from when I was born and even before then. So if you're a younger person getting into Batman, you might have to read up on some current events or some history, not even. in order to understand the things that he's pulling from this book. Draft dodging, going in the draft, all those sorts of things are within this tale of Batman: The Dark Age. So, a really, really well told story. I say, if you loved Superman Space Age, I think you're also going to like Batman: Dark Age. Both of these get my 2 thumbs up and full recommendation, but Batman: Dark Age was really, really fun. So, really fun take on The Dark Knight. If you love the 60s Batman show, you might like this. It's got a little bit of that fun and whimsy, but it does have the same kind of tone as Batman Begins, and less of the gee golly willikers Batman. Like, that's not the way Mark Russell writes Batman in here. He's very serious, but the whimsy is from the situations and how Mike Allred is illustrating it. So those are my thoughts on Batman Dark Age. Absolutely loved it. Full recommendation, 2 thumbs way up. Let me know what you guys thought down below in the comments, and we'll see you guys next time in the Funny Pages.